right, I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Monroe County Stormwater Management Board on May 14th, 2020 at 3 p.m. And our first order of business is approval of the minutes for January 9th, 2020. Did anyone have any comments or corrections?
I wasn't present, but I did happen to see the meeting, and so I'll be voting on it.
Okay. Oops. Sorry about that. Is there any public? Oh, we don't do public comment on this. Okay. All in favor of the minutes for January 9th, 2020. Terry, would you please call the roll?
Julie?
Yes.
Penny?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
And Tron? Tron, I haven't heard from you. Might be muted.
Yes.
There, I got
Can you hear me? Okay, I have a mute button on the headset and on the screen, so sometimes it's kind of like when you lock your caps on and you don't know why your password's wrong.
Okay, motion carried. Oh, did I even get a motion for that? I don't think I did. Should we start over?
I move to approve
I have no time to think about this.
said minutes.
Second.
Julie, your vote again?
Okay.
Yes.
Penny?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
And
Sorry.
Tron?
Linda.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. Now that there's a motion. Let's move on to new business. The first item is the monthly stormwater expenditure report for January through April of 2020. Terry?
I would like to, yes, I've got all the reports here, and I'd like a little feedback from you guys. I didn't want to go through each one of the items. Is there anything in particular that caught your eye that you would like to hash out on any of them? If you want me to, I can go through them. I'm happy to, but.
This is Penny. I know that a big truck was bought, and so it took it way over that budget line. How will that be paid for out of what other part of the budget? That was from March, I believe.
Yeah, hold on just a minute.
There was a new dump truck purchased.
Yeah. Trying to remember where I shifted money from that.
I just wondered if we need to worry about any other lines, whether or not the other lines have enough money, I guess, for the rest of
Yeah, I'm looking here in March. And
well, that should be in the 40s, and we really don't have anything else to come out of the 40s for the remainder of the year.
Okay. Yeah, it was at a 46,300. So.
Yeah, and that was all we budgeted for was that one dump truck with the mobile radio installation. It covered the plow and everything. So we shouldn't have anything else coming out of the 40s for the remainder of the year.
Okay, it just said that percent complete was 309.91%. So
no.
That's why I was asking about it.
And I'm not
Wasn't
sure
the amount.
that comes to, I'm surprised that doesn't say 100% for the 40s. I'm not.
That's probably an error on our part. As I look at the budgets, the appropriation balance, it has 164,949 budgeted for it, and we've still got 9,000 in there.
Yeah.
So I have maybe a theory. that could encumber some encumbrance of last year's. So the amount that it's representing, the 300% might be a encumbrant from last year. I don't know. I know that when I keep my own budget, that you have to be careful because you got 100% of what was budgeted in the given year, and then if you encumbered anything and you didn't put that in your equation, it's going to inflate the percentage.
Yeah.
So
I think that's exactly what happened, Tron. I'm looking here in our appropriations balance, and beginning appropriations was 0 and adjustments was 164,949. And I'm sure that was an encumbrance that we brought over from last year.
Okay, so that percentage really is more like 92, 93%.
Yes.
Okay.
Anything else?
I guess if you just want to go through the projects and where we are at the percentage of the completion, just for the public,
Yep.
quickly.
I'm happy to. Baby Creek is advancing. I'm going to focus on the most current month, if you don't mind, Tron. Just, I don't see much advantage to going through how to progress.
Yes.
Okay. April on the last sheet there. There you go, Connie. If you look down at the bottom in the yellow, Baby Creek is, it's reported at 65%, but they've submitted 90% plans, and we've made comments on those plans. The remaining money in that is for right-of-way, and that's primarily it, right-of-way negotiations and permitting. That job, it's moving along well, and it'll be subject to where we stand in financing with what the commissioners and council wants to do with appropriations and how to proceed with that. Stip Road it's well advanced also. Right away and everything is, there was no right away required for that. They've got 15% in that to get through, finalize some permitting with the Corps of Engineers. And Cherry Lane, you see a significant billing there. They just, we just paid for the pipe on that to the tune of $157,000. And we just got a final bill from the contractor on that. And we did walk that just this week and did a punch list to close it out. So other than the retainage on that, it should be billed out. And again, I think on that one, you see extra money there. That was money that was carried over encumbered from last year. And the reason for that was we had an issue with a gas main, and it didn't get, project was supposed to start last fall and didn't get done. So I carried money over. Truesdale is complete. That was a large box culvert that stormwater crew put in early in the year, late last year, and it's in place and complete. And Monroe County Garage, what you see there for the $21,000 is the design, and we just signed the agreement with them to start construction on that. It's Fox Construction also. It's doing the building out at the garage, and about the only thing they've done so far is just breach the berm that's on the existing pond. And the fee you see there, the 25 is, or 21,000 is just the design. So what I need to do next month is add in the construction amount to that job.
Okay.
Anything I missed there, anyone?
No, I'm grateful that you're taking care of the issue out at the highway garage site. And I know we already have approved the contract for construction through the commissioners. So it's good to take care of it. It sets a good example. We can't let that go. So thank you for pursuing that.
Yeah, I think that was a good move. And first of all, I mean, IDEM raised a comment in their audit secondly, we had that existing pond over in the sanitary sewer, which CBU didn't care for. So we're addressing both of them.
And Terry,
Yes.
correct me if I'm wrong, you're not going to the council for an additional, I think we discussed, we're transferring from another project in those lines. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted the board to know that we're not going in for an additional to get the project complete. We're gonna take from another project and move forward that way.
Yes, actually, I've got, if I go back up to my budget sheet here, let me find it. I can never find these things quickly. Lisa, we've got that on-call contracting service.
Okay.
And let me find it here.
We want to be able to move forward with it and get it done without doing an additional. So we're kind of taking away from another line. So since it worked out for the timing for Fox Construction to do both projects at the same time.
There.
Right. There's got to be a cost savings there, and it's, the council's hesitant to approve any additionals at this point. So it makes sense if we can fund it without hurting another project that needs to get done. Then I think this is a good plan. Thank you.
Any other questions on the expenditures?
Seeing none.
Connie, let's move on to the next item then. The next thing on the list, she's got it up there for me. Put your agenda back up, Connie, please. The next three things on the agenda are just items for discussion that I would like to discuss or just start some conversation on it. Penny, several months ago, if you'll remember, I'd submitted some brief summary of how the stormwater budget was spent and just saying that to proceed and to grow, we need to think about additional funds, and tried to justify that a little bit. And your response was to go back into it and complete your projections. I've done that, and I've got a draft report that I've given to Lisa for review, and I'm scheduled to discuss that with her tomorrow. My goal is to have a draft to the Stormwater Board for the the June meeting.
Good, thank you.
I know that given the situation, this report, we may have to take it at face value because there's a lot of question of what direction we're going at this point, but I want to complete it and get it to you for your information.
I appreciate that.
That's all I've got there. I'm anxious to get Lisa's input on that. The next thing on the list is contracting legal support for completion of the drainage ordinance. I think to be honest with you, I'm running out of time. I'm scheduled to leave in March, and I'd like to get this online before I go. It's been one of my goals for quite a while. And Julie mentioned contracting out legal support to get through it. I know Dave's busy, and I think to move this ahead, I'd like to proceed in that direction, and I'm looking for input from the board is what I'm looking for. What are your thoughts given the current situation we're in?
And we want Dave to speak, and we know we've thrown a lot to the legal department over the last year with the
Yes.
right-of-way design standards, the right-of-way permits, a lot of things, ordinances that pertained in the highway department and stormwater that are outdated, have been for some time. So we know we've thrown a lot out to, like I said, the legal department, and we don't want to step on any toes there. But again, we're a little bit nervous with Terry retiring. And this is just something that he wanted to see accomplished beforehand. And maybe Dave has a timeline that this will get accomplished. That'd be great. But we also didn't want to put more pressure on Dave with everything that's going on in the world today. So.
Dave, are you still with us?
Yes. Yeah, I've been working at that remotely, and I would say I've been through it all, made changes, and I'm going through it one more time. And I probably, within a week or so, I'll have it done. Maybe even by next week. So if you want that, that's fine. But I'm almost there.
No, if we have that kind of goal, that's awesome, Dave. We didn't want to, like I said, I know Terry's reached out and you've responded and everything, but we know you have a lot on your plate. I know with all my federal aid projects and stuff and condemnations and parcels and stuff that, you have a lot going on, and we didn't want to put more pressure and, oh my gosh, there's Terry and Lisa again.
Yeah, I understand, Dave.
No, it's all right. And, if I don't get it to you in a week, then go ahead, it's fine.
I think if we could look for it at the next stormwater meeting or the one after, I think I'd be very happy with that. And I don't know how everybody else feels, but I think that's awesome.
That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, it's everything on that list plus a pandemic. It's been a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I understand. If we're talking in the next meeting or two, that would, I think if Dave turns this around, it'll give me an opportunity then to coordinate the technical standards with what he's got on the ordinance.
Yeah, that all sounds great. This is Tron. One thing I think you touched on that I think we should make sure that doesn't happen is that Terry goes to retirement, or hopefully that's your idea, and we don't get to utilize his institutional knowledge of what he's been kind of managing for the last several years. So I wanted to tie in the fact that, the planning department is now looking at ordinance rewrite, and we had hoped that these could coincide. So having Dave on board, I think, can bring over some of our direction with the new consolidated development ordinance, right? And with our drainage ordinance, I think that it's very important that we still kind of have some people kind of working on both ends. And as long as we preserve Terry's knowledge and even pause until we get some more idea of what we're doing with our CDO before we adopt the drainage ordinance and make sure that, they coincide pretty well, would be great. And that's the only thing I would like to see happen, is that we make sure we preserve Terry's knowledge, but we incorporate that with what we're doing with the CDO and still try to make sure that they complement each other and they're meeting the underlying intent of why we're creating these ordinances.
I would add that that's true. We do have the CDO coming up, but that's also been backburnered slightly, and maybe even more than slightly, depending on the will of the Plan Commission. And so it seems to me that what I would rather see is us move forward with our drainage ordinance, and then have the planning, the consultants work on incorporating that in. And if we need to make changes, they shouldn't be that critical. They could be just terminology, or creating a common language or whatever it might be, and we can make those later. I just feel like there's so much going on that impacts the quality of stormwater, and we're always in this reactive mode, and it would be better to be proactive. And that fits into this idea of getting trying to figure out how we can get an inspector on board, and working through all of that. So I think it is hard to talk about finances and money and hiring at this kind of time, but anything we don't get done in advance, we're paying double, triple, quadruple, whatever it is, probably more than that, to fix things later. And it's much more disruptive to people's lives, and it is just an expense that we need to be wary of. So I would say if we can proceed if we can get something for us to read and comment on, and then maybe in a couple of months we have our stormwater meeting, I would feel comfortable, sending a copy to the consultants for the CDO project, the County Development Ordinance Plan project, and see if, they may have comments as well. And then I would be okay with moving forward if we're happy with it, if this group is happy with it. So that's just my thinking. Thank you.
A couple things from what you're saying, Julie. First, I don't see the adoption of this ordinance as being complete. It's going to continue to develop after we've approved it, and after I'm gone, there's going to be issues, and it's going to change and keep changing. But at least we've got an updated ordinance to work with. And second, you briefly mentioned the inspections, and I just want to relate to a project that Lisa has going on with Paul, where they're replacing and repairing storm inlets out in the subdivision on the southwest side of town.
Van Buren.
And Van Buren, thank you. And that construction is terrible, and it's because we didn't have eyes on it during construction.
Yeah.
And the list goes on and on with that situation. And you'll be money ahead if you can get somebody out there watching them and getting them to just build things per the approved plans.
Yeah, I think Van Buren for the inlets part of that, I think I had emailed the board and everything on that. That's $140,000 cost to the county that could have been prevented if we had more eyes on when that was being developed, and we haven't had that. And I know it's something that we've talked about with planning, with Dave, that this is something, if there's a position that the county needs, that's a position. And I think you guys see it. I think Julie sees it more in Tron, being on the Plan Commission board, and the issues that we deal with, the drainage on trying to approve these projects, but you don't have the person out there to make sure it's being built just exactly that way. And that's why we have a lot of the problems in the subdivisions that we have.
Yeah, I see that as well, and I appreciate that. It is, the good news is we're moving forward with permitting software, and that can help because it will incorporate this into the process. So I was on that call, I don't know, a week ago, maybe 10 years ago, I don't know when it was, and we are moving forward with permitting software, and that's going to make a huge difference for incorporating those requirements. So we just need the person to do it.
Yeah, and that's good to hear, Julie, because the last I heard that it was kind of on hold. But I think in talking with, we had our department coordination meeting Monday with planning, or Tuesday, I don't know. And that was if there was one thing that came out of this pandemic, is how much that software program needs to happen, because there's been so many emails and miscommunication and everything. If you had that one central location, everybody has access to everything. And we were just, like I said, we were just talking about that. So I'm glad to hear that you guys are still moving forward with that. I know a lot of things have been put on hold, but that is, I think it's been way long overdue. So
I'm excited about that also.
Yeah.
All of you.
Yeah.
Okay, any other things on the ordinance? Okay, one more thing to discuss that kind of laps into the ordinance. I would like to discuss a little bit with review fees. This is just personally with stormwater. When petition comes in, Connie reviews it for the stormwater quality elements, the SWIP documents, and I review it for grading and stormwater detention, that sort of stuff. Larger project like the subdivision down the south side, Southern
Meadows.
Southern Meadows, thank you, Lisa. I spent several days reviewing that, and that time, it equates to money. And I think this is the only agency that I know of that doesn't charge review fees. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but it's something in my mind that needs to be hashed over. And when we're doing the ordinance, is the drainage ordinance comes to fruition, we need to have our minds made up whether we want to do it or not, and have some amounts, and then how will we administer that if we do? So I'm opening that up for discussion.
If we were to go that route, Terry, sort of what level of fees would you be recommending? And I'm sure that it'll be tied to whatever the kind of project is, but what are we talking about here?
There's
will it
different
increase cost for people?
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I'm sorry. No, I said, and how much will it increase cost for people?
It will increase cost for the developers. Of course, they'll pass that on to the home buyers or whatever. And I've seen it structured several ways, such that to one extreme, I'm seeing on the higher ends of development on the north side of Indianapolis, where they would make the developer sign an agreement that he will pay for review fees from an external review source, where they would hire a consultant to do the review, and then the developer would agree to pay those fees directly. I think I could go back and do a review of time I've spent on projects and come up with what I'll call an average or something reasonable for different types of projects, whether it's a large subdivision, whether it's a multifamily project, large, or if it's a site plan for some commercial site, and try to come up with a reasonable amount of hours. And then you can apply the county's cost for my employment and Connie's for hers, or a portion of it. That would be up to you guys to decide. The other extreme would just be not to charge fees and assume that it's covered. It's covered in some other way.
So at this time, you do reviews, but you don't charge anything,
We do not.
right?
So I think it's really, oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, the way things are set up now, our review is part of the grading permit process. And I think it's what I'm getting the feeling, or what I'm hearing, is that the grading permits will still be administered through planning. Our fees could probably be incorporated into planning grading permit. I don't know if there's catches there, jumping two different departments. I don't have the answer to that. I don't know. But it's something. The first question is, do you want to incorporate review fees or not? And then how will we do it if you do?
So you kind of foreshadowed one of my comments is, depending on what project or what kind of extensive review you need to do, how could we maybe categorize those? I was going to say, if there's going to be excessive grading and, but you were just saying that might stay in planning, maybe we could figure out a pay scale for projects as far as like if they're in a floodplain, because you're going to do further analysis, or if they're in some type of eco zone. Like, how are you going to gauge, I guess, how much time you spend on any given project, or what kind of environmental kind of restraints are already applied to that particular piece of property? So I would say if you could create like a pay list with those kind of circumstances built in, it'd be neat. But honestly, I don't think we're talking about that much money to be generated from this, right? I mean, it's just the fact that we don't charge him.
That's a good question. I'm bringing it up because in my mind, there is a fee there that's is warranted, and right now there's no covering Connie's efforts and my efforts, and well, let me parallel that on with an inspector. If we're doing inspections, we should be billing that inspector's time too. That will help soften the employment of those people.
And I'll even take it a step further where like we have green infrastructure out there on private property, and you know, we want to make sure that people are aware that they have some type of stormwater infrastructure on their property, and we're talking about doing owner operational manuals and stuff like that. I mean, again, I'm curious if we could kind of tether it to that, like if this place is actually going to have a rain garden that they have to maintain, and there's an operational manual, and we're trying to be of assistance, like, you know, could we be like, okay, well, this is going to trigger an operational manual. We're going to want to do a fee for that, like a review fee, because you're going to prepare that as well, you know. Those are just my thoughts. I'm kind of curious what Dave Schilling thinks, and especially Julie now that she got her hand raised. But you guys deal with permitting fees way more than I do, so I'm trying to figure out an equilibrium to this where there's a lot of fairness applied.
Julie, do you have something to say? Tron said you had your hand raised.
I did, yes. Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting on my spacebar. I probably wore it out on Zoom meetings. I think one of the things that has been set up in planning may work well here. And I think what I would ask Terry to do is to do some calculations, looking at the planning fee schedule, but then thinking about how much each type of project costs. But many of the same kinds of projects that they're working on also fall into stormwater. And I would recommend looking at, you know, what is the fee per acre for an Eco 1, Eco 2, Eco 3? What is the fee per acre if the development's on a floodplain, you know, as Tron suggested. So I think this may be a way around talking about things like raising taxes, although we could talk about bonding for specific projects at another point in time. But I think this may be a way to help offset the cost of getting that inspector in and placing that cost firmly on the shoulders of the people who are requiring that kind of work to happen. And it's how the planning fees go into county general fund, and but then county general fund pays for the salaries of plan department staff. So maybe that's a way to look at this, is to think about the costs going to the people who are creating those costs rather than spreading it over the whole community. Although it benefits the whole community and it keeps our costs down later, I think the entity that's asking for this kind of work in an eco, in a floodplain, or whatever the drainage system is, and they should pay for this. It's not something that we should just say, well, we need this done. It's like planning, we need it done, but we do make people pay for what they ask planning to do. It's never quite covers the cost of planning staff. And I think for me, it seems like that may be the way to go forward. So if I would ask if you could put some suggestions together, some numbers together, and I'd love to hear Mr. Schilling too. Thank you.
I think it's totally reasonable, and it's always helpful when you go in front of the council that you are showing that you're trying to get as much out of your workers as possible and generate revenues, especially after this recent situation.
Julie, I'd like to touch on a couple things from your comments. Back on how to deal with the fees, in particular inspectors. What I've seen is that we would have an inspection company, an outside consultant doing inspections, and the the developer then would hire that consultant to do on-site inspections and pay him directly. That would be a way to get into our inspections without really adding payroll costs. I think that's a way to phase into it, if you will. We don't really.
A number of drainage boards across the state kind of do the same thing when they're doing some. I've had this conversation with a lot of county surveyors, and with legal drains and ditches, we don't have in Monroe County. They deal a lot more with money, but yeah, they use kind of a list of outside consultants that they can pick through, then go and do the inspections because they want kind of a third party perspective. So I think that's a great idea, Terry. Sorry to jump in there. I thought you were finishing up. It's kind of hard to not step on people's toes occasionally on this.
The other thing I was suggesting is if when I look at parameters for setting review fees, I think it's important to keep it as simple as possible, where we may not have all of our costs covered, but at least get started with them and keep it straightforward so that everyone can understand them. That's all I've got.
And I want to chime in. I agree that your time is worth it. Dave and I have had many discussions over fees, but I hate, and during this time also, I mean, if there's a way to do it through a consultant and bill it directly to the developer, I would be more apt to support that, I guess, at this point in time. Just due to, I think the stormwater fee has to take priority over that at this point in time. And the only reason why I say that is because of the projects that the board has approved and that we have designed, and we don't want to just throw those and set those on a shelf. And we don't want to have the community go through a situation of a pandemic and everything that's going on and then say, we're going to raise your stormwater fee and we're going to start charging you this. And now you're going to have to pay us fees. And maybe if it would come across a little bit easier and phasing it in as, okay, we're going to have somebody else review them and charge the developer directly. And then it's not a big impact on the community. So that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I guess one thing I would say about that, and it's fine either way you want to do it, but if you do have a consultant, if you require the developer to hire a consultant, Terry or whomever is still going to be doing work looking at that, unless you just accept it as presented and issue a permit on that. So I don't know how much time the county employee would need to review what a consultant does. Anyway, I mean, so there may be, what I'm just trying to say is there may be some county expense regardless of which way you go on that. So
Sure.
I understand that.
Yeah, but I mean, ultimately, we're still meeting that goal of getting an inspector. I don't think Terry's ever going to be out of the clear of reviewing some of these. I'm kind of more curious how it triggers having an outside consultant. So if we could get some idea, and I want to clarify, I think I said I would like to see more of an equal kind of Librium type thing. I didn't mean that. I meant more predictable. So something that is predictable and has fairness applied, obviously, across the board. So I'm curious, how could people kind of go into this knowing that they might have to hire an outside consultant? How are we going to really inform people that they know that this might be part of the process and that these costs are more predictable than just dealing with them as they get there? Now, I know some circumstances might trigger other types of inspections or fees maybe, but I would be really curious how we would be able to alert people to what they're getting into and how things are triggered.
Tron, I think for it specifically with inspections, I'm kind of getting into the weeds here, but you can define, or it's there's certain times when you need to have an inspector there and look at it. One is with respect to this upgrade on the road. Another is when they are installing pipe and bedding it, make sure it's bedded properly and in place. And then the structures to make sure they get built for the plans, that kind of stuff. And then any pads for buildings, you want to watch that, any structural items. And then at the end, I would just say a walkthrough to make sure that it's built per the plans. So you can define those structural elements and get an estimate based on that.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just more or less, if I didn't have any idea how things worked and I was just going into it, how would I, as just a normal citizen, be alerted to this process and what may occur? And yeah, I think what you were just saying of using those elements to factor in a cost is awesome as well. So that's all I have.
Maybe there's an opportunity to do some sort of a hybrid to begin with, a flat fee for large developments. And these really wouldn't be your average citizens. These would be corporations and developers, right, mostly. But
Yes.
just do a flat fee from our end that's not huge, but then mandate the hiring of an outside consultant that we give them an approved list. And that way we're still getting compensation for the extra time needed to review plans, but it's not exorbitant, but then the developer is then forced to do what they should be doing in the first place, which is making sure that they have the right consultant hired to get this done.
Well, I've got everyone's trapped here in this meeting. I'm gonna throw out another one. And I have trouble with people filing for building permits, building homes, and ending up with a home where the lot doesn't drain, water stands around the lot, there's no rear yard swales, and the contractors just build the home and get out. And people come to me continuously asking for assistance on how to get their lot drained or how do they keep their house from flooding. And I think another element that should be considered with the new ordinance is requiring plot plan or individual residential building permits. I remember, well, I required it on the subdivision on the south side and then Shermer's also. And I got a figure from Smith Rehab that the plot plan would be about $350 if they did the design. It's an additional cost for the home builder, but the contractors are out there building these homes and they're getting in there and building the home and getting out. And they're really, a lot of instances, they're not watching out for the homeowner's best interest. I think a plot plan will go a long way to do that. Again, this is the only community I know of that does not require plot plans. I took Lisa over to another county, I can't remember where it is, and we got examples of their plot plans. It was a small community, much smaller than Bloomington or Monroe County. And I think it's something we need to be considering and getting in the ordinance.
Yeah, we had a situation where somebody had built a house basically on the downside mouth of a ravine and was surprised when their house was flooding. And I know Terry probably spent more than $350 worth of time trying to deal with that person and explain to them that water runs downhill. And so a plot plan would be, I think, a good thing.
You have to know why we don't require that at this time? Was there any reasoning or did it just never happen?
It just not happened.
So if other nearby counties are doing this, we could get some numbers from them about what they charge too, as examples.
Yes, we could. And I've got sample plot plans from other counties where Lisa and I went over. I can call several of the review agencies up in Indianapolis and Boone County up in that area and get an idea what they cost. And I've got a a plug and chug list of what needs to be on a plot plan already created. So I'm looking for feedback from you all.
Yeah, I mean, Terry, I'm not sure exactly what would be included in that plot plan, but if it, I mean, I assume since it deals with drainage, it would show where the structure is going to go, which might be helpful for establishing setbacks to make sure people are complying with those as well, so we don't get those BZA cases where people build their houses too close to the property line and then come in for a variance.
That's exactly right. It's to set up to cover setbacks, easements, and then set grades on it so that there's freeboard around the house and the water gets away from it, and make sure that one person's not dumping water from their downspouts into their neighbors without a provision for it.
Yeah, I totally support doing this, and the sooner the better.
I do too. I think in the end, it'll be a big cost savings. So it's worth it just right there. But also so people don't end up in miserable situations.
Well, and people, if they're trying to take care of corrections, they're going to be paying more themselves also down the line. So this should save people money also in the long run if it's done correctly.
Right, and that's where I'm curious, is this something that we would want like upon request across the board on every project? Some may merit, I mean, we still accept, sketches on napkins. There's a lot of our ordinances that miss some of that content to be required or performed. So I absolutely agree. Starting to have a plot plan is one step in the right direction. But where do we want to have that? In our ordinance, in our zoning, subdivision control ordinances. Do we want that in a drainage ordinance, stormwater? I mean, again, my main curiosity here is how are we going to build in the predictability that someone's going to have to provide a plot plan, and in what circumstances are we going to require that?
Ron, this is a good question because it's really tied to, first of all, I'm talking about residential homes, not developments. The development would go through the planning, have a petition, and they would submit site plans and grading plans. I'm referring more to single family residence, Joe Blow that goes out and builds a home. And that is really tied to the building permits next door. The plot plan is a separate document that I'm not sure the building department would I feel like I need to review them, just make sure grades are set, and planning will have an interest with setbacks. I think with the new permitting process that this is an opportunity to incorporate it and have it go through the route through the different departments appropriately. And then how the fee is paid, that's something to be worked out in my mind. It's directly related to the new permitting process.
Right. So I'm guessing this would be kind of a as needed type request for a plot plan, or would it be across the board for everybody?
I think it should be across the board for every single family resident.
Okay.
How would you even determine as needed until you already had the plot plan?
That's my whole question. That's why
Makes sense to just do it across the board.
Well, some things haven't been incorporated because they were really infeasible for people to comply with over time. So now that I think things are becoming more feasible, or we're realizing this is something we really need now to, prevent, issues in the future, is again a great first step of incorporating those measures, because you know, I don't think we'll ever have like, you know, a perfect, complete anything. I don't think that exists. I think things need to evolve as we move forward and as technology changes too. I had just one other follow-up, kind of, it goes with the as needed, and it goes back to kind of the inspector thing, and I'm just throwing this out there. I will defer to my colleagues, but instead of putting you on the hot seat, Terry, or the MS4 coordinator of, hey, we want more of an extensive inspection, do we want to look at the drainage board as some type of authoritative body to be like, okay, this one is triggered, highly sensitive. Let's make sure that they use an outside consultant come in, because we do have geologists, we do have engineers, we do have very skilled people on that board. Or do they be like, no, Terry, you feel comfortable, we feel comfortable, we can do this one in-house? Again, I'll defer to my colleagues. I just wanted to put that out there because a lot of other communities do use their drainage board in that capacity.
But again, you have to take review time to decide where it goes, rather than just having a blanket kind of program.
Right, right. It's much quicker to just have a consultant that has to be hired rather than wait for a month for a board meeting or 6 weeks if you're past advertising. But I agree that it's an interesting idea, but if we did that, I would say we go back to paying drainage board members again, because we're not paying them right now, and that's a lot of work. That's just me.
No.
Anyway.
I just wanted to put that out there. I'm either or, and I agree. Yeah, it does slow down the process. It does do that, but I do think it takes the pressure off of our MS4 coordinator to be the person that, you know, has to make that call. That might be a huge financial not burden, but obligation onto the developer.
I don't think we should have an either or in the decision whether it's applied or not. I think it needs to apply in some form to everything that happens, so that there's consistency and the developers and the consultants know where they stand. Excuse me.
Even on inspections, like even if they're like very small mom and pop.
Yes.
Or like, okay. That sounds good.
I would graduate the fee as best we can without getting too complicated and just set it.
And that works perfect, because that gives that predictability. And that's all I really want, is someone to come in here and understand what they're going to, you know, be required to do.
So is this something where you'll get more information for us, kind of decide what the vehicle would be for it and all? And then we can consider it and vote on it?
What I've heard is, regarding plot plans, is to go back and come up with some drafts, some examples of what others are doing, sample fees, and a draft of what I think a plot plan should include, and bring that next month. Regarding inspections, I go out and get examples of how other communities are setting up their inspections, whether it's in-house, whether they're contracting it out, and how those fees are structured and who's paying what when. I think that's important. So I've got plot plans, fees, and then what was the other thing? I'm going to get back with you on the next month or so about this report, and report where we are next month on the drainage ordinance. Those are the things on my list.
Okay. Sounds good. Does anyone else have anything else?
I have something real quick. I just wanted to remind Terry to bring back some information on that whole Cave Creek area. Remember, we talked about all the problems there and what some of the potential solutions were. We had Christopher Burks as a consultant, and I've got thunder over my head. We had Christopher Burks as a consultant. I just wanted to get an update on that next month if we could.
Sure.
Can you keep the thunder where it is?
It's not on the north side of town yet.
Hope it doesn't come here.
I am north. I am
I,
north.
I guess
I'm
I'm
near north. I'm near north though. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
south of New Unionville. So
Ah,
Okay, and does that pretty much take care of things? I guess so.
I have nothing. It was nice to see everybody.
it was. Could we be sure to meet next month since we do have some things to talk about, even if there isn't any budget issue, if we could just keep talking, because I think we, because of the pandemic, we've been away too long. So that'd be my suggestion.
And
I want to suggest that that's a good idea, Julie. Especially, I know it seems like March is a long way away for Terry to leave, but it's not.
It's
And,
No.
and we'll have to have discussion. I'd like to have cross training before, Terry and I've discussed this. I don't want him walking out the door and having somebody new come in, not knowing what's going on. So we would have to go talk to the council about putting, 2 positions into that for a short time. So that stuff has to happen in the next few months for it to, to get somebody on, say, the first of the year and at least work with. It might be something, this is something to think about. I think Terry and I want to have a 2 or 3 month window to where he could train somebody. So if he's done in March, maybe we could put into the 2021 budget an item to cover that double position while one, that we could bring on and pay him at the same time. So
I did that just recently, Lisa, with the council, and they supported that, and I support that strongly too. So when you start going to the council, I'll be sure to write you a letter of support. I do think having overlap with a very high-end professional positions is highly valuable because you don't have someone else that can really step into their shoes except for that person. So to allow them to work and collaborate together and kind of be shown the ropes is, I think, is something that, is irreplaceable and invaluable. So
I agree. And it's an important position, and I want to keep everything that Terry has built in the last 4 years going in that direction, because I think we're headed in a good direction, and I don't want to drop the ball on all of that.
So hopefully my go around helps soften the council for your go around, because I got a lot of support.
Good, appreciate it.
When I was on the council pretty much agreed that this would be a good practice in general.
Good.
Of course, the pandemic has kind of changed their attitude toward a number of things, but I think that if we're trying to get some fees and things like that at the same time, that would kind of soften it a bit.
Right.
So I think they're likely to be supportive of that.
Okay, it's just something to think about. Like I said, March will be here before we know it.
Yeah.
And I want to thank Terry for saying, yeah, we've got problems, but here are a couple of solutions. I mean, not everybody goes and seeks solutions, and so I want to thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Absolutely.
Okay, should we move to adjournment now?
So moved.
Second? If we need a second.
I don't think so.
Okay, well, we've got another meeting.
Bye.
All right. Bye. Nice seeing everyone. Be safe.
Good night.
Night.